think we're live. Hello everybody, welcome to this very special 10% True live stream. As anybody who's a fan of the channel will know, I don't normally do live streams, but this is a special occasion for me for two reasons. The first is that I think as many of you know, I've been working with Rob McCray, better known as Bunyap, to put together a constant peg campaign for DCS. So let me just do some magic here. And play this while I'm talking, because that's much more interesting than watching me. So Rob and I, for the last couple of years, have been working on this. I should be really upfront and say Rob is the person who's put all the legwork into this. I obviously wrote the Red Eagles book in 2007 with the help of a number of the squadron members. And I put some sort of profiles together, gave Rob some advice on how a campaign might work, and helped him with some source material. I wrote a narrative for it, but actually, if you buy this and you think it's any good, then it's Bunyap who deserves all the praise for it, because he's done the custom skins, he's put together all the missions, and has created voiceovers, and put together a series of very detailed mission briefings as well. So the general idea behind the campaign, I'll let you watch the video and buy it, hopefully, but the general idea behind the campaign is that you take the role of a pilot in the 4477th Test and Evaluation Squadron, and you will be flying a MiG-21, and your responsibility will be to go out and expose the tactical air forces to the capabilities of that MiG-21. And those are some of the things that you're seeing on the screen at the moment. It's been built really with the entire continuum of operations in mind. So you start out as they would have done in 1979, let's say, when they got to Tonopah, by doing some fairly scripted performance profiles. But by the time you get to the 10th or so mission, you will be flying much more dynamic stuff. So you'll be involved in the mission employment phase for the weapons school and that sort of thing. So it's a very well researched, very well put together campaign. I absolutely encourage you to buy it and give it a go if you've got the MiG-21 module, and feedback to us. Let us know what you think about it. Razbam obviously working on the MiG-23. I'm almost certain we'll go ahead and make some edits to these missions so that the MiG-23 can be rolled in once that's released. So anyway, that brings me on to the second reason that this is a live stream and very special for me, and that is that this will represent the 25th guest that I've had on the 10% True podcast channel since I started it a year and a half or so ago. And I'm really pleased to tell you, as you will know, that it's Paco Geisler who's joining me, who is my 25th guest. So Paco is the all-time high MiG-21 pilot who was on the 4477th. He flew the airplane on 500 sorties, exposing the tactical air forces during that time. And so I'm delighted to welcome him to the channel. Paco.
Good to see you.
It's great to see you. Thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Yeah. So before we start, I know you've got some ROE you want to talk about. Do you want to just
real quick
run us by that?
Just real quick. Just to keep it simple as far as questions and answers or whatever, I do not and cannot talk about where we got the assets, where we get the parts, any other outside organizations or agencies that we worked with, or any other locations that we may have worked with or flown out of. Just Tonopah. The program started in 77. Tonopah opened in 79 and closed in 88. So let's just keep it at that place.
I think that's a very reasonable request, and we'll be happy.
And secondly, if you're going to do a video game of the Flogger, it won't take long, because it normally is broke and just sitting on the ground. So it'll only be like a 2 or 3 minute video.
Well, we won't need any input on it then. Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. So Paco, obviously, then the idea is that over the course of the next hour or so, or however much time you want to give us, we'll understand and learn more about your experience flying the MiG-21 and your time on the 4477. There's a ton of stuff to talk about. Far too much in the time that we have available. It had its own culture. It went through its own growth process and changes, there within as a result of that. There were challenges around the aeroplane. So there is a lot to talk about. But before we start any of that, could you just give us a quick rundown then of how you ended up joining the 4477th TES? What were you doing up until that point? How did you get into the squadron?
in I transitioned from the aggressor squadron to the F-15 in 78. Went to the weapons school as a student in 79 and went back as an instructor in the F-15 weapons school, 433rd at Nellis. And we had an F-15 rep with the 4477th whose tour was over, and I was asked to replace him. So in 83, I went to the 4477th and stayed until 86.
Did you know
about as the F-15? And again, most of the pilots that were in the 4477th at the time, we tried to have a complete variety, everything from Tomcat, Hornet, A4 people, F-15 people, F-16 people, F4 people, just so that there was some credibility when they talked to the air crews that came in to train. You just didn't make shit or make stuff up,
Did you know about constant PEG? Had you been exposed to
it?
Oh,
yeah.
Blew up?
Yeah. Before I went to the F-15, I was an aggressor at Nellis in the T-38s and then in the F-5E. And we would fly against the assets. And so would the weapons school. At that time, the 414th F4 weapons school was the only one. So you were exposed to the assets. And so I had flown against them in the F5. And then I had flown against them a buttload of times in the F-15 in particular in the weapons school.
Did you harbor any desire then to go and fly them?
I didn't really think about it. I enjoyed instructing in the F-15, and I didn't want to leave the airplane. And in fact, when I went to the 4477, I was able to maintain my instructor status in the 433rd, so I could fly like on Mondays as an instructor in the 433rd, and then go up to Tonopah and fly my MiG hops against, weapons school students or line F-15 guys, F-16, whatever would show up to fly. But it was important for me to maintain my currency in the F-15 so that when I left the program, I didn't get stuck like in an A-10 or something. I was looking out for myself. So the big deal to me was to maintain my currency in the F-15.
How close as an aggressor then, or as an F-15 guy in the weapons school, how close were you to the 4477th cadre that was already there? Did you know about the reputations of the airplanes? Did you have any?
Oh yeah. You knew, of course, you've been briefed on the program. And then secondly, you knew the guys that were up there and could sit around and talk to them in the vault or whatever. And just, you knew them all by their first names. So it was no different walking out the door to go fly a dissimilar BFM flight against an F4 as it would be, I'm going out to fly a dissimilar sortie against a MiG-21. Because of the amount of time that I had been at Nellis and been exposed to all the people that were in the program and flying out of Nellis. It was fun because the kids who would come and go through the weapons school, it was really crazy to sit down with them and say, okay, the particular syllabus that you're on, BFM 7 is a dissimilar BFM ride, and here's what you're going to go do. And then they were briefed in that you're going to do this whole, and then when we come back, you're going to sign these papers saying you never did it.
What was your initial impression of the MiG-21 then? Had you been able to see one up close before you joined?
Yeah. When I got out of flight school, I went to Eglin flying the F4s, and a friend of mine, Bobby Ellis, came to me one day. He was my flight commander, and he said, "Look, you want to go cross country this weekend?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be fun." He goes, "Well, it's in a C-130." And I said, "What is that all about?" He said, "Just say you do." And I was an LT. I was just a silver bar lieutenant. And so we got on this 130 at Eglin, went all the way to Edwards in this airplane, got there, and I'm going, what are we doing? And we walked in a hangar, and there was a MiG-21 and a MiG-17 sitting there. And two Americans, telling us about them, let us sit in them and stuff like that. So that was the first time I ever even saw one, and the fact that we had one or two. And so from that time on, and then of course I left and went to the aggressors. After that, it just grew from there. So I had seen the assets before I flew against them, was exposed to them, and got to fly them.
Some people describe them as being quite agricultural. I think I can't remember exactly who it was. One of your colleagues said to me that they were designed to be flown by somebody who one day was ploughing a field with a buffalo.
Yeah,
and
it's a toy.
Yeah. So what did you think of the construction of the way it was put together?
I never felt like that I was going to be able to tear it apart in flight. It was basically a toy. I mean, it was, you got in it, and it was a hot rod. You straddle the damn motor, and a big motor in it, and this and that. But the big thing was it was a hot rod, fun to fly, but I wouldn't have flown it within a foot of a FIBA or a real F-15 trying to shoot at me, because it's not designed in my mind for combat. It's just not designed. It doesn't have any fire protection per se. It's got bladders for fuel tanks. They're not foamed. It's just built to fly and train with and have fun in, but as a combat airplane, not me. No. And it's extremely easy to start, extremely easy to fly, extremely easy to land once you do it. And it's just, I mean, you can run it from no airspeed to 750 knots, no problem. I never felt like it was gonna quit running or just come apart. I just never did. Of course, a lot of that, 95% of that was the confidence you had in our maintenance system. But the airplane was just a cheap, fun to fly hot rod. It really was.
Did Bobby Ellis, so for anybody listening, and you'll tell me if I'm wrong on this, but Bobby Ellis was the chief maintainer then for the 4477th. He had spent some time working on the assets even prior to the Red Eagles being started up.
Right.
But did you understand or know the histories of these aeroplanes? Had that been explained to you? Did it matter?
I knew where they had come from, how we got them, how we found them, and what they did to them to put them in the shape that we had them. And I felt 100% that I wanted to do that when I went. When I interviewed with at the time, the center commander, the two-star, he even said, it's an accept. I think it might be it might be a risk, but is it an acceptable risk? And I never felt like it was not. I had a family. I never felt like it was not an acceptable. And I said, sure, yeah, it's just I trust these airplanes just like I trust the big gray one sitting out there on the ramp right now. I had no distrust of that airplane whatsoever. I just wouldn't want to fly it in combat.
And there was something quite special about the way that you operated the airplanes in terms of pre-flighting. That was left to the crew chief.
That's exactly right. That was his airplane. When I walked out to my airplane, Todd, my crew chief, who had been a Thunderbird crew chief. Now, come on, So I walk out to my airplane. Now, he didn't look like a Thunderbird crew chief when he was my crew chief. But when I would walk out to my airplane, if Todd said, not today, I said, okay. I didn't argue with him or whatever. If he said, it's good to go, it was going to be good to go. And I could do anything I wanted with it. Anything. I never, ever felt like within my control that there was anything going to be wrong with that thing at all.
I said at the start you had 500 missions or 500 sorties in the MiG-21. Did you fly them all in the same airplane, or mostly in the same airplane?
No, I flew different tail numbers, and on my 500 sortie, maintenance painted a big 500 on the side of it, and they knew that I was looking. They knew that I was not going to fly the Flogger, and that I was going to try to fly as many sorties as I could in the MiG-21 before I left the squadron. And as I got closer, I set a goal for 500. So they knew that. So when I went out, the very first airplane that I flew in April of '83 was the last airplane I flew, and it was with a big 500 painted on the tail. Now I flew against an anchor clanker, in an F-14.
What did you call it? An anchor clankler?
Well, a Navy guy.
Okay. What was happening? I mean, we're gonna get to the point where we talk about, for anybody who's listening, we'll get to the point where we talk about how the airplane flew and how you force it, and what you thought about it as a sort of I don't know, point defense fight. You've already said you wouldn't want to go in combat with it, but in terms of how it operated, we'll talk about that in a sec. But I'm just keen to understand what was happening culturally within the squadron at the time you joined. You've just sort of made a reference to your crew chief not looking like he was a Thunderbird crew chief. Where was the squadron at in its cultural development?
When I first got there, and even before I got there, it was a test and evaluation squadron, basically, is what they called it. And it was at Tonopah. There were 3 hangars, a nice pad where we could refuel them and start them, and a runway. And a lot of property around it. And we had trailers we lived in, triple high bunk beds and everything. And it was stepping back in time, didn't matter how long your hair was and what you looked like or whatever, it's the way it was. And then I remember standing out on the MiG-21 pad one day, looking down north of where we were, and there's a lot of road graders and earth movers and people in uniforms down there. And I remember talking to my commander at the time. I said, I wonder what the hell they're building down there. And he goes, the Air Force just got here. And that was where the 117 was coming. So it transitioned from nobody really bothered us. Nobody left us. Everybody just kind of left us alone. Let us do our things. As long as we didn't hurt nobody. To it became a full up, stand up ORI and inspection, rules and regs, everything. It became a stand up Air Force squadron, flag and everything. So it did a complete changeover.
How did that go down?
For the good. It really did for the good, because maintenance procedures became in line with what they thought needed to be done. We had syllabuses to train the new guys when they came up. We had very defined ROE that we used with the assets. We had syllabuses and profiles and BFM engagements that we did with the air crews. We got to meet with the air crews before the Sunday before they were going to fly with us. We got to meet them face to face, talk to them about how to fly against it, talk to them on the phone, go back on Fridays, meet in the hangar or in the trailers and meet them one-on-one and everything. So it became just an extension, almost like a graduate course for an aggressor deployment. Yeah, it did good. It did good. But it also meant, because of that, we had a lot of money, that it got a lot more publicity, and we got a lot more VIP visits.
That's a bad thing?
Well, I don't need to be in the middle of trying to run a squadron and fly and fight and have to show Secretary of Defense around. That's above my pay grade, So that's just, we had more fun. Just let us be our guys, and we'll do it the right way. These guys are professional. They're very, very experienced pilots. We don't have, you know, the maintenance is very experienced. I mean, it's very, trust us. And because we were not located at Nellis, sometimes me, at my position, I was the OPSO, I just felt like that maybe they're not quite trusting what we're doing. Spent a lot of time explaining it to people way above my pay grade.
Who was the squadron boss?
I had three. I had George Jennings, G Square was my first one. Phil Hound Dog White was the second one, and Fast Jack Man Clark was the third one. Then I left and went to Eglin.
So you've mentioned structure. You've mentioned bringing the squadron back in line with the Air Force from an operations and from a maintenance point of view. Then, so what was your checkout in the MiG-21? What did it look like?
Well, mine was different than what maybe a new guy coming into the MiG-21. My checkout was the guy that I replaced, Buffalo, sitting on the back of it, showing me how to taxi the damn thing and how to start it and everything like that. And then taking off and him following me around at T-38 and just kind of showing me this and that and this and that and fight a little bit against the T-38. And then and like I said, we got structured. You know, we had guys in the squadron that were way smarter than me that wrote -1s for the airplane, ops manuals, systems manuals. We developed syllabuses that they would actually go through. So it was a structured program that they went through, and it was good. You know, we had two airplanes that were not flyable. We had a 23 and we had a 21, and they ran a hangar. So we could sit them in there and teach them how to start it. They were like simulators. And it was just, you felt so, as an OPSO, you felt so comfortable that when a new guy came in the squadron and he was being, or a guy was going to the Flogger and Z-Man was his instructor and was going to check him out, that when he was checked out and signed off with a grade book and everything about what's his strengths, weaknesses, this is what we're going to do, that, you know, I don't have any problems him flying against any airplane in the fleet, from a brand new lieutenant to a 2-star general that wants to come up there and just get his ass kicked.
What did the airplane fly like then? So what were the first things that you learned about it?
I can remember the very first takeoff in it. You know, it was not a big deal as far as getting how you get strapped in this thing and how you get it started and everything like that, and taking off in it. But when I got airborne in it, I'll never forget, I got airborne in it and put the gear handle up and then back to neutral so that the system would maintain its air for the brakes. And then it was just, I could hear all the hydraulic pumps running and stuff. And I'm looking around and the canopy's small and it's humming, and I touch my helmet to the thing, you know, I'm going, well, is this somebody's going to stay together? And, you know, it's cables. And so it's to the stick is just, and it's about up to here, and it's ugly and it's got levers on it. And I remember Buffalo were flying, and about 350 knots, he goes, do an aileron roll. I said, okay. And I slapped the aileron over, and I damn near went out of control in it. And I said, what the hell? He goes, that's right. It ain't got no yaw damper on it. It ain't got computerized flight control. It's got a rudder. You got to use the rudder back from the old F4 days. I mean, so it was what it was just a hot rod, but I stepped back 20 years in technology. Now we had a US altimeter, and we had a US airspeed indicator, and we had a US G meter, a US radio, and a US G suit. The rest of it was all that Gomer stuff, you know, and it was just circuit breakers from hell in it, just all over. But they're wired in positions that you left them alone, and that's the way it was. But it was just weird because you could hear you could hear every little thing going on in it. You know, you could slam the rudder with your feet and hear it bang, 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 bang behind you. I mean, you're just going, good night. I mean, am I going to be able to, you know, really fight in this thing? And so you flew 5 sorties against the T-38 before you started flying against the fleet. And you first started, you did performance profiles only, and then you started flying. And once you got comfortable in the airplane, that it's just an airplane, and you understood the flight control system and the energy maneuverability of the airplane, it was fine. You couldn't wait to get out and go from no airspeed to as fast as it would go.
How did that work then? So for most aircraft, if you've got 0 knots on the airplane, you've got turbulent flow into the inlet, compressor stalls, that kind of stuff.
No. You know, I saw, hell, I compressor stalled the F-15 starting at one time. Now that's ugly. Of course, it was a long time ago before we got the newer models, but the old ass A models back in 75 or 78, you know, it just compressor stalled on the ramp. This thing had a mechanic, you know, it had a mechanical throttle locker. And so you would put it up into mill, and you know, you didn't just jam it, you just put it up in the mill and you'd watch the nozzle. Then you went over a little hump and you saw the nozzle open up. Okay, the afterburner lit, you moved it forward, and then you released a lever that locked it into afterburner. So you could take your hand off of it then. And then you just grab the stick with both hands and just, here you go.
So what could it do then? You've said 0 knot to 750, it could do that, but what does that mean? Why is that important?
Well, you know, one of the profiles that we would do was we'd bring an F-15 or an F-14 or an F-18 or an F-16. And one of the things
We appear to have lost Paco. Paco, you back?
Yep,
okay.
You got me?
We lost you. You were saying that you,
okay.
so you'd
so
have
you
F-15, F-18.
You get next to an F-15, and one of the profile events that I like to do was I'm sitting in an airplane that's, you know, built in the 60s, and he's sitting in a brand new McDonnell Douglas F-15, you know, right out of pilot training or something. And I'd say, okay, let's slow down, join up, get beside me, you know, look at me. I'm not going to bite you and all that kind of stuff. That was another thing, just trying to get them up close to you. It ain't going to blow up. It's just a MiG. Come on. Get them up close to you. Sometimes you'd flinch and they'd move out, you know, and say, oh, no, it's all right. So, but you get them beside you and you'd say, all right, set 250 knots. And when I say 1, 2, 3, go into full blower and let's see what happens. You know, and they're going, oh yeah, ready, 1, 2, 3. And it gave me time to get the damn burner lit. 1, 2, 3, go. And you just go, see ya. It's a rocket. Until it got, the F-15 and the big jets would start catching up as it would get subsonic, and then you'd be side by side, and then you'd terminate. And I'd go, that's what it'll do. You know, when it decides to leave, it's just gonna leave. I mean, it's fast. It's you know, it was designed as an interceptor, not a fighter. It transitioned, but it was designed to go against B-52s and stuff. It's just a manned rocket, and that's what it was like, just a manned rocket. Then we did another profile where I would say, all right, get yourself 250 knots, and I want you to pull your nose up 70 degrees beside me. And when you get to 150 knots or so, I'll go to 90 knots. Whenever you get to 150 or whatever your mid-air speed for wherever you're based is, I want you to just rudder it over and point at the ground. So we point at the ground and accelerate back. And about the time we get to about 200, 210 knots, I'd go, oh, change your mind, pull your nose back up. And they're just trying to, you know, and you just pull it up and stand it on its tail and hold 90 knots and just look at him. You know, and the whole idea when I would talk to him was, this airplane is going to lose airspeed like you can't believe, and then it's going to be a kite. So what you're going to be doing is you need to learn how to fight a kite that doesn't move. It just sits there. And the way you have to do that is you got to get away from it, because you're not going to, you get slow with it, you're not going to do good. It's not necessarily going to kill you, but nobody's going to be able to do anything until somebody runs out of gas. You got to stay away from it. You got to use your airplane. The hardest thing to teach guys when they flew against the MiG-21, especially in the F-15 or whatever it was, I have no advantage over you other than I have flown the MiG-21 and you haven't. My advantage is I've also flown your jet. So I know how your jet should fly and what you should do with it. Don't fly your jet like I'm flying my jet. Fly your jet the way you're taught to fly it against my jet. But they wouldn't. They wanted to. No, they're going to just try to get in there and be a hero, and it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. Especially when we have thousands of hours in their airplane. It's just not going to work. But the difference, but when they would go from day one and finish on day 4, it was remarkable, the difference. And so you felt good. You felt good about
it. There is that balance, isn't there? One of the things I remember talking to Earl Henderson, Obie Henderson, about the formation of the aggressors, and he was saying, in the early days, units stopped inviting them along because they got pissed off they were getting their asses beaten so much, and there was this moniker, be humble, you cool fucker, which was right. the moniker. So how did you find the balance then between those very first engagements of a visiting pilot and then getting them to progress to the point on day 4 where they knew what they were doing?
Yeah. I think the difference is when we went and flew as aggressors, we didn't try to embarrass anybody. They would embarrass themselves. And with that, many of them, it became an ego thing. And so, you guys are a bunch of hot dogs and this and that and this and that and this and that. So that reputation was just not fun. So when we flew the MiGs, when I was there and Z-Man and everybody were there, what our charter was is we said, you know what? We don't have to be humble. I don't have to fly like a Soviet. And that's what we did. When we briefed them, when they came here and said, this is not an aggressor deployment. Today's Sunday, you're getting your brief. Monday, you're going to sign a bunch of paperwork and you're going to start flying against this asset. You put a picture of a MiG-21, MiG-23 up there on the board, and you say, this is what you're going to do. And let me tell you, we're going to fly it as hard as we can fly it. We're going to fly it as mean as we can fly it. We're going to fly it as fast as we can fly it. And we're going to fly it as slow as we can fly it. Period. We're going to fly the hardest airplane we can fly against you. And if we can whip your ass all 4 days, we'll be happy. Now we're going to tell you how to be successful. And those academic sessions where we would talk to these guys before they would fly, they would be 4 to 5 hours long. And so they would show up day one, like they didn't, did you come to that brief yesterday? There were a lot of those radio calls. Did you blow off that or did you come? Yeah, I came. Well, let's do some of the stuff we told you to do and let's get after it. And it would transition. But we showed no mercy. That was the big deal. No mercy. I'm going to fly this airplane harder than any of the 60 countries that had them at the time when we had them. There were 60 countries. They built like almost 20,000 of them, and 60 countries had them during that time of the period when we were in the 4477. And we're going to fly them harder than any country that has them. And if you can handle it, what are you worried about?
Do you get any adverse reactions from that then? One of the rules, isn't it? You leave the ego at the door of the briefing room.
No, none whatsoever, because I think they were just awestruck that they were flying against a MiG, and they really, really, really wanted to do good. And they could do, and they would. They would. They just would, And plus, remember, we flew one-on-one with them the whole week. So if they went out and the first 2 days got their ass kicked, it wasn't like their wingman was there watching them get their ass kicked. They're going, Jesus, what are you doing? He's one-on-one, and you're debriefing him one-on-one. And then you meet him face-to-face on Friday when we'd go back to Nellis to the trailer. You'd meet him one-on-one. I met a lieutenant that I flew against for 4 days. F-15 guy from Langley. Looked like he was 12 when he joined up. I went, damn. And I got back to Nellis on Friday, and I said, I need to speak to Lieutenant so-and-so. And we walk around in the trailer and get your guy, and you go in a room and sit down. And I'm sitting there talking to him about the pros and cons and good, bad, you know, this and that, and how you do it, and you're doing good, this and that, and this and that. And he's looking at me like I got two heads. And I said, LT, I mean, you following what I'm saying? He goes, you speak perfect English. And I said, what do you mean I speak perfect English? He goes, I said, I'm a damn American just like you are. Really? I said, yeah. So just listen up. I mean, that's, you know, it would not be unspeakable to hear weird ass shit like that. I'll never forget that kid.
So was there a particular blue air adversary from your point of view that was more difficult to beat than any other? I mean, F-16 with this sort of much lauded fly-by-wire 9G capability.
Yeah,
F-18.
I think the most fun and the hardest fight that I had would be well-flown A4s, believe it or not. Yeah. You get a good Top Gun instructor, not the student, but a good old-ass Top Gun instructor in a A4 mic or something. Yeah, that was a fun fight. And the Hornet.
So why?
I think I think the low-speed handling characteristics of the A4 and the same for the Hornet, due to its size and thrust, made the difference. The F-15 was just a nightmare to fly against if it was flown against an F-15 pilot. You got to remember, there, you know, 90% of the guys utilize about 10% of the airplane, and 10% of the guys utilize about 90%. Well, you got hold of them that 10%, that was not a fun ride if you were in a MiG, and you know, you got those guys showing up to fight with you. But I enjoyed the A4, flying against the A4 and the Hornet. Those were the hardest fights for me.
You've talked obviously about the 1v1 side of things. Part of what you were simulating as an experience, and of course for the the ACM type stuff, was the GCI, the ground controlled intercept. Can you, Paco, talk a little bit about those sorties, how they worked, what they were like?
The way the ride would start would be, we would sit in the squadron, and when your asset took off out of Nellis, the GCI called you, said, hey, you know, Raven 2's airborne. Okay, shut up. So he would come all the way down the southern edges of the area, past Indian Springs and all that, and he would enter at 4808 Alpha, and he would enter the range headed towards the 75 ranges and the 71 ranges, which were west of Tonopah. Well, when he entered the range, they would call you and say, hey, he's 100 miles from the field. Okay, you go out, get in, start it, taxi out to the runway. That's how fast you could do it. And when GCI, Moose or somebody would call you and say, he's 40 miles, you would take off to the north away from him, turn around and start running your intercept. And you'd either have one of you or maybe two of you. It could be two fish beds. It could be Flogger in a fish bed, or it could be a 38 in a F fish bed, you know, whatever. So you turn and start running towards him, and GCI, and you would try to fly some semblance of a Soviet formation and a tactic. And you would fly these intercepts as fast as you could go, because you would want them to see what a true MiG intercept and how long it's going to take. It ain't going to take very long. You know, you put a Flogger out there that is side by side with you, and you do a spin around to trail, and it accelerates out to 800 knots and goes into the beam. That intercept happens pretty damn fast, twice as fast as what they're accustomed to. You know, they're looking at, you know, each of them got 400 knots, and, you know, they're going to have to shave before they get to the emerge. And it's just, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this. No, I mean, that blip is coming down that scope, you know, and I'll never forget one of my best friends, Chuck McGill, when he shot his MiG down during Desert Storm, he said that damn MiG turned around. And he said, I was glad I had flown at Tonopah, because that son of a bitch turned around and we had closing velocities in excess of 1,500 knots. And I'm going, somebody's hauling ass, because he said I wasn't going that fast. So that's what we were showing them, was the speed at which this is going to happen, and how you had to make up your time. And so they made their intercepts, and then we joined up and split up. We tell one of them to go here, one of them to go here. And if Raven 1 was supposed to get his Flogger hop that day, Flogger went to that range, that intercept point, waited for him, and then the fish bed went to the other guy, fought, did our thing, they joined up, went home, and then we'd go home. But we tried to show them the true, and, you know, we had lots of manuals, and we had a lot of people who knew what they were doing, could, you know, do to whatever they do. And they would tell us, this is what they're doing, this is how these are the formations they're doing, and this and this and this. And we would try to show that to them. But after that was done, then it became, I ain't gonna fly this thing in a 3G circle while you come in here and just hammer my shit. It ain't gonna be, you know, that part that they did, the way they trained, their training, their BFM training, the Soviet BFM training was just, I mean, it was, they couldn't have had a midair if they'd have briefed it, because they just didn't do anything. Nothing. I mean, it was just loops to music. I mean, shit. Well, we didn't do that part. But the intercept phase, fast as they'd go. Shrink that time and make them think and have to react accordingly.
That was, of course, one of the philosophies behind the aggressors, understanding the man, as it was referred to.
The briefing, yeah.
That continued into the Red Eagles. How far did you take that? I mean, how far did you try and get in the head of your counterparts?
No. And like I said, our charter, the way we ran it at that time, almost everybody, probably everybody who had come through the Constant PEG program had been and flown against the aggressors. And the man and tactical formations, those are briefings that are given during an aggressor deployment to a wing, you know. So those are given all the time. You know, we take all the slides and everything to talk about the man, and they'd come in and listen and watch and listen. So they got all that, you know, and they'd get all the, you know, formations and, you know, this and that, and this is what they're doing. The flight lead will be in the trail and that and that and this and that. They get all that. But when they were done with that and they came to us, you ain't getting that. You already had all that. Okay, that ain't it. This is a MiG. We want you to see it, and we want you to fly against the hardest MiG that you will ever see in your life. So that aggressor, we were not aggressors. That aggressor stuff stopped with us, and we became purely a training aid in MiG aircraft, and be humble, Moya Zopa. Moya Zopa, be humble, my ass. Okay? That's what it was. That's what we painted on the hangar for the satellites one day. But we were not going to be humble. It was not humble. We were just going to try to train you, and we were going to give you the best we could possibly be. You know, game day here's game day. Aggressors come to you, that's preseason. Game day. Put it on. You got 4 days, and we're going to give you everything we can give you, and then you're going to go home.
Tell us about training rules. How restricted were you in things like role reversal? What you could do, what you couldn't do. How much risk could you take with the asset?
The ROE that we used, the air-to-air ROE, were the same that were established by the Tactical Air Command. We had a 1,000-foot bubble. We had a 500 or 5,000-foot deck and all that kind of stuff. Pure safety of flight rules of engagement. But we did not have an airspeed limitation. We could run it out of airspeed, or we could go as fast as we wanted to. So, I mean, we didn't have that. And what we would do is force them to respect theirs. If that wing commander had a 200 knot limit on the F-15 or the tactical air, that was fine. That was fine. That was fine. Probably one of the biggest, and it wasn't because of being a midair, one of the biggest things we emphasized to every crew was when we're fighting, if you lose sight of me, tell me. It's not because, I'm worried about running into you, because I see you. Shit, you're 3 times my size. Trust me, I know where you're at, but you are wasting my time if you don't see me. So as soon as you lose me, tell me that you don't see me. I'll talk your eyes back on me, and then we'll go again. So everything kind of went into a pause. And it got to where you could do a 2-circle fight or whatever, and you could look at this guy in a F-15 or whatever and go, dumbass, he doesn't see me. There's no doubt he doesn't see me. And so you'd have to ask him, you got me? I just lost you. Well, now I know you're lying, but I'm going to talk your eyes back on me and get you. Okay, you got me? Yeah, okay, here we go. And you just start over again. Role reversals, what you try to do is get 2 good engagements, an offensive engagement and a defensive engagement. If he started an offensive engagement and he lost the offense, you'd stop. Say, come on. And you wanted him to succeed that each engagement before he transitioned to another one. You didn't just try to see how many you could get, whether he did them worth a damn or not. So you were constantly trying to repeat, We could not do neutral setups. We were prohibited. And I can't even remember why. Of course, it was 40 years ago, but we had some rule that came from way above my pay grade that said you can't do neutral setups. You had to either do offensive behind the wing line or front of the wing line. So the way I read it was, okay, either front of the wing line or behind the wing line. So I'm just going to spread out here about, you still got me, you still got me, you still got me about 4 miles of line abreast. Check 5 degrees. Okay, I got you slightly after the wing line, clear the maneuver. And then that's how you got around it. And I'm saying that not because we were rules busters, but we felt that almost every engagement was going to probably start from the front. We're going to miss a shot. Somebody's going to survive the merge, and it's going to pass to pass. And so teaching a guy what to do with an F-15 or an F-18 or a Horn or whatever from a neutral pass, he needed to see that. An offensive neutral or a defensive neutral, we called it.
You, if I remember correctly, Paco, because we talked about, we first talked in 2006, and if I remember correctly, you said that you were quite fond of the earlier MiGs. So those MiG-21s, respecting the rules of not, trying to discuss where they came from, but the earlier ones were lighter, better nose authority, and then the heavier ones came along. Yeah,
we had the regular MiG-21, and then we started getting the F-7. People know we had those. Now, the difference is, would you rather own a Cobra GT, with a nice big 427, or would you rather have a kit car? Well, the F-7 to me was a kit car. I said, I just don't like it. It just doesn't seem as good and put together as well as, it's painted nice, it's pretty inside, as these Iron Horse, MiG-21s. So my preference was the MiG-21. I enjoyed it more. I felt more comfortable in it. The F7, maybe it was just my head, but I just felt like I'm just not big on this thing right now. A lot of guys liked it because it's brand new, smelled good inside, looked good inside. It's all painted up, had a nice seat in it and everything. I just felt like I could fly slower, I could fly faster, I could have more fun in the MiG than I could in the F7. So I preferred the MiG.
You mentioned the seat. I was going to ask you, from a responsibility point of view, then these are national assets. Did you feel any different strapping into that than you would have done an F-15 in terms of your criteria for ejection? Were you going to go regardless of whether it was a national asset?
We had in the standard Air Force, we had rules about ejections out of control at 10,000 feet AGL, such and such, and you never ever. It never crossed your mind. The ACES company building those seats, I mean, thrust you can trust. It doesn't matter. Okay, I've had enough fun. Boom, I'm out of here. In the MiG that we had an outstanding life support system, but the way you got in it and all the shit and the way you strapped in it and cranking handles down and this and that, you always in your mind said, you got to make up your own mind. Do you want to jump out of this or try, or do you think that it'll work? And each guide, before we got the F7, when we got the F7, it had a real ejection seat in it. It looked like an ejection seat, and you said, you know what? I think I'd jump out of this son of a bitch. But in the MiG, everybody had their own theory of what they would do. I knew exactly, I ain't going to try it. I just didn't feel comfortable. I think I could land this son of a bitch on a dirt road a hell of a lot better than I could try to jump out of it. My fear was all right, here I go, pull the handle, I'd go about a foot up the rail and it just set fire to my boots and, that'd be the end of it. So I personally did not want to experience the egress system in the MiG-21. I felt more comfortable because it was such a tough airplane. I'll just land this son of a bitch right here in the desert and I'll be okay.
Talking of things that you didn't really trust then, Flogger.
Oh, it wasn't that I didn't trust it. It was not my favorite airplane. You have to remember, in the entire program of Constant Peg, we flew 3,000 Flogger sorties and we had 10 of them. We flew 12,000 MiG-21 sorties and we had 9 of them. Hey, Paco, it's your turn to fly the Flogger. It ain't happening. Okay. Why am I going to fly an airplane that we have 10 of them and we can't get that son of a bitch more than 3,000 sorties and we have 9 MiG-21s and we're going to fly that damn thing 12,000 times? Guess what? I'm flying the MiG-21. I don't need to walk around in the bar and be a hero and say, yeah, I flew the MiG-23. I never got in it, never started it, never gave a shit, never cared to even want to be a Flogger pilot. I just didn't want to. I wanted to fly a fighter, not an interceptor. You couldn't even fly offensive. You couldn't fly defensive BFM in the Flogger. That was a prohibitive maneuver. You always had to start behind a guy. You start behind him. Tell me when you're ready. You see me? F-15 guy out front. Okay, I see you. You ready? Go. That F-15 that's out front of that Flogger is offensive. Because that Flogger can't do it. It can't even do a damn loop without going out of control. Ask Herb Carlisle. I had no desire, and I said, I want to fight I don't want to just come in on Monday and find out they're all 10 grounded. And, you know, hopefully we'll get them back in the air here in about 3 weeks. Really? No. Y'all have fun. Z-Man, he loved it. No. Don't want any part of it. Never have. Don't care.
Did you ever...
I never even briefed the F-15 guys. Okay, now the second day you'll come up and fly against the Flogger. That's all I'm going to tell you. If you see it, you're offensive on it. Doesn't make a shit if it's behind you, in front of you, or whatever. Do whatever you want. Just make up something, and you'll still kick its ass if it's not on fire. So just, yeah. I just don't have any. No.
Did you have any experiences in the MiG-21 then that sort of raised the pulse? Any, you know, because there were some, I don't know, was it Thug Matheny who had the canopy implosion? Actually, was that a MiG-23 or MiG-21? I can't remember, but you know,
no, his canopy imploded in an F5.
Oh, it was an F5, was it?
Oh no, you're talking about Thug's canopy.
Yeah. That was a MiG-21, I think.
It was not unusual for us during daily flight ops that, let's say we launch 4 Floggers. It was not unusual for the ops radio, Peg Ops, Bandit 4. Oh, shit, go ahead. Firelight. You know, Jesus Christ, just every day, just on, and just, you know, okay. I mean, is everything fine? Oh, yeah, I knocked it off. We're coming back. And it's just every day. In the MiG-21, you'd have things like, about like, you know, my pucker factors would be, it didn't have a fuel gauge like you're used to seeing. It didn't have a gauge that registered how much fuel you had in it. It had a knob that you turned a needle. Hell, if you wanted to say, I got 4,000 pounds, you just turned it over to 4,000. It doesn't mean that's what you got in it. You just turned it to whatever. So they'd fill it up with about 2,400 liters, and they'd rock it, get all the air bubbles out of it, you know, right back here over your head, get it where it just overflow. Then they'd reach inside and say, okay, you got about 2,400. Okay. It had a flow meter, and it just sensed gas going through it. But it had a 500-liter light. And when that light came on, that's what you know shit happened. So, yeah, every time that light came on, you know, you thought you had more gas than you did because the flow meter was slow or weak or old, and you're out there blowing around in burner, and you might be 80 miles from the field, and all of a sudden, boom, that big red light came. Oh, yeah. I worried about running it out of gas, but I never worried about it quitting or catching on fire or any of that stuff. I just didn't worry about it. Not like the Flogger guys, you know. Damn. There's not a Flogger guy in the 4477 that didn't come back 10 times with a firelight. I guarantee you. Period.
I think Ted Drake or Z-Man, I can't remember who it was, told me that was an American system, wasn't it? I think it came off of a KC-135.
Oh yeah. I mean, that fire system, you know, the original system in the Flogger was a what would you call it? It was like a photo, and what it looked for was flame. You know, and if it's all flame, it said, oh, hey, I mean, that's when the light would come on. It saw flame. And again, in the Flogger, once it caught on fire, because it circulated fuel through all kinds of areas trying to keep it cool, you know, you saw flame. It shortly followed a couple of seconds later by a huge ass explosion. So we put a fire system in the airplane, loose. You know, they would sense overheat and stuff like that to give somebody a warning instead of it just go, oh, firelight, boom, and blow up. Oh yeah, it had its own system, that U.S. system put in by whoever. Yeah. Just because, you know, when they tell you that you're going to check out an airplane, that we had to put a fire system in it so that you'd know when it was on fire so it wouldn't blow up. I don't need to sit through them academics. That's about enough right there for me to say, you know what? I'll just stay in the 21. Y'all have a good time. I don't need that. I don't need to spend all my time with my checklist trying to figure out how to get back before this somebody blows up or catches on fire. I just don't need that.
You would fly simulated flameout on every sort
All
of
the
sky?
time.
Okay.
All the time.
What was the deal with that then?
What you would do is the way the base was set up and the areas that we use, you could be anywhere from 100 miles, 80 miles, 70 miles. So when a guy fight would be over and we wanted you on the ground, we didn't want you to be we didn't want you to be airborne with 500 liters. We wanted you to be on the ground with 800 liters. So most guys, sometimes the blue air would run out of gas or get low enough that shit, they'd have to go all the way back to Nellis because they couldn't come to Tonopah. And so we would knock off a fight and he'd say, look, I'm bingo, I got to go back to Nellis. Okay. Well, right then you would talk to the GCI. GCI monitored every flight out there looking for, strangers coming into the area and intruders, we called them, and shit like that. As soon as you'd knock a flight off about every other day, you'd say, all right, I'm zooming to climb. What's my range? 72 miles. So you'd zoom and you tried to get us, run it out of airspeed and you point at the airfield. Say, all right, shooting an SFO. Point at the airfield. If the airfield started moving away from you, I ain't gonna make it at my airspeed. And we use 250 knots. So you get 250 knots, point at the airfield. Oh yeah, it's moving underneath. Okay, I'll do some S turns so that I can do it. And you just come in and do your thing. If you're moving away from it, you said, no, I can't make it. And you'd look around at your own, in your mind, what you like to use. Say, yeah, I like that. I like dog bone. You might turn over there and point at it and say, yeah, I could make dog bone. I could land there, or I could do this, this, and this, and this. And then you'd stop it. But you shot them all the time. Yeah, all the time.
Did you have, you said that, you thought you could land on a dirt track. You'd rather do that than eject. And you've just mentioned a dry lake. Is dog bone a dry lake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So was there a concern that if you had to do that, you'd end up? Is it called an arroyo? It's like a ditch in the desert. I know that somebody. I think Mark Postai had dead stick to MiG-17 in, and he hit this arroyo and it sort of.
Well, he hit a berm. It's a berm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Off the end. Of course, he's taken off, so he's off. There's no dirt road or dry lake bed off the end. It was just desert. But with the amount of time that you flew around out there, both in the T-38 when you went out to, quote, investigate and look at dry lake beds and stuff, and with extra gas you had in your MiG, you knew, dog bone, which was to the east of the base, Tonopah, dry lake bed up north. Yeah, you knew high roads that the range group had out there. Oh, yeah, you knew what was out there and where you could put that thing down. And like I said, that thing had a gear set on it that I said, damn, I just felt like I could land it in the desert and be fine. I just felt like I did, like I could. I just, we could sit around and talk about it and stuff, and I'd go, I don't give a damn. I know other guys too, And guys were talking, guys would talk. Sometimes they go, well, what are you going to say on the radio? we had a Marine Cajun, and I'll never forget Marine Cajun. He said, let me tell you something. If this son of a bitch catches on fire and I can't make it back to the field, I ain't doing no code words, letting y'all know stuff. I'm saying on the radio where everybody in the world can hear me, this goddamn MiG-21 is on fire. Here's where I am, and I'm getting ready to land, and I need somebody to help me. Otherwise, you tried to, and you had T-38s that were out there that were safety chases, and they could help you and stuff like that. No, I had no qualms about, in my head, that I would put that thing down in the dirt. Not a bit.
You mentioned earlier, Paco, and inscribing a message on the roof of the hangar. to over satellites flying overhead. What did I think you met a Russian general, didn't you? You had to sort of be his escort or something at a dining in or something. But
we had what they called closure times, talking about up there, and so every morning, early in the morning, I'd show up, and before we'd have a mass brief, we always had a mass brief in the morning to talk about the schedule and who we're flying against and all that kind of stuff, any issues going on, and then we had cover times. And cover times were given to us by Cheyenne Mountain that said, look, satellite will be able to see the base from 9:18 to 22 minutes. That's how long it took for it to go over. So you need to either be airborne, because they couldn't figure out how to make a satellite to track an airplane that was flying, or all the airplanes have to be in the damn hangar. Okay, so we have cover times. So we honored those cover times. And what was that second part?
The Russians, in terms of the, I'm sure you met with the general.
Yeah, so we had it was I think our second commander. We had a bunch of Russian aviation generals and all this kind of stuff when everybody was getting late in the 80s, and Reagan was president, and everybody's starting to hug each other and everything. Well, they came to Nellis, okay? This whole entourage of these assholes, or these guys, show up to Nellis. And they're going to have a function. It was on a Friday night at Caesar's Palace. It was a big dinner. And they're in their uniforms and stuff. And we're all in our uniforms and sitting around looking at each other. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting there, and the two-star at the time is talking to somebody and answering some questions or whatever. And this Russian sitting across the table, he just blurts in, interrupts this conversation and says, El General, how many MiGs do you have at Tonopah? And without blinking an eye, this two-star goes, oh, I don't know, 200-300. And he just goes back to answering this thing right there. And this guy turns white as a sheet. And I just go, oh, damn. Monday morning, we get our list of closures. There ain't a time we can fly. I'm going, 3 months. What? So we started messing with him. We said, okay, we got a satellite coming over at 10:12 until 10:32, 10:34. Maintenance, I want you to take an MU-2, put it in the hangar, but I want the nose to stick out the back, and I want you to take a 38 and stick the nose out the front, or the tail out the front, where it looks like a weird-ass airplane. See what they do. Let them take pictures and look at it. Look at that thing they're making down there. And then I went to one of the maintenance guys, and I said, I'm really tired of this. Went to Buster, and I said, if you can get some guys up on this hangar, we have 3 hangars: ops hangar, Flogger hangar, 21 hangar. And then 21 start bed. In between the 2 hangars was the Flogger start bed, and then the ops. I said, if you can get some guys up on that hangar, I want you to paint Moya Zopa, big old letters on the top of that hangar. He goes, what is that? And I said, it means kiss my ass in Russian. Go ahead and put that thing up there. So we played with them until they, realized that they don't have 300 damn MiGs out there. But that general, I'll never forget, he didn't even break a stride. Oh, we had, I don't know, maybe 300, and just went right back. But it shut us down.
You said a few minutes ago that, of course, the Blue Air couldn't land at Tonopah, but what would happen if somebody declared an emergency and did land at Tonopah?
No problem. We would, we had intruders. If you had an intruder, that'd be a civilian airplane that wandered into the area. And we had red flag or asset guys that we'd be flying against, ran out of gas or whatever, needed to land there. Not a problem. They would land. They would be taken to a blockhouse, debriefed, because there were a lot of hangars there that weren't ours. And when you land at Tonopah, damn, who are all these hangars, and stuff. So there was stuff there that they weren't supposed to know was there. And we put them on an MU2, take them back to Nellis. We would meet with their maintenance, figure out what's wrong with the airplane, take their maintenance guys up there with our maintenance guys, fix that airplane, and then they'd come up and fly it out. If you had a civilian, wander into the area, and one of the most infamous ones were a dentist and his girlfriend coming from Tahoe or somewhere, and he's looking at his civilian map. He sees Tonopah, the city of Tonopah, but as he's flying, he's looking at the wrong airport. He sees our airport, and he comes in this just like a 172, comes from the north. We got MiGs flying around there, MiGs on the ground, taxiing out, and this and that. And they're calling me. Bearing Control's calling, saying, "Hey, I mean, this intruder, he's like on 3 mile final. Now he's on 2 mile final." I'm going, damn. And we've got a 38 out there trying to get him to get away. He lands, rolls down to the end. There's MiGs, taxiing by. Hey, what's going on? And so I go out there in my Jeep, and I go take my intel guy and security guys, get them out of the airplane. They lay them on the concrete. Face down, laying on the concrete. I said, put bags on their heads, and they put these, cloth bags on their heads. I squat down next to this guy, and I go, pull your mask up. He pulls his bag up. I put a map down there. I said, where are you going? He goes, right here. I said, oh, you're right here. He goes, oh. I went, yeah. I said, it's going to be a while. So he puts the bag down. I look at my intel guy and the security guys, and I go, okay, take these people over to the warehouse, and if they see anything or say anything, deadly force is authorized. And you can see that bomb. And so they drive them through the desert for like 30 minutes, like they're out in the middle of nowhere, and they're only like 2 buildings over. And so they'd go over, and we had FAA people who were briefed on the program just for those reasons. And they would come and do their thing, but they always met a FAA violation and a judge.
Really?
Because we would lose sorties. Like an F-15 sortie, like the day that guy landed, we lost 2 F-15 sorties. They had flown all the way up there. We couldn't launch the MiGs, and they were fined the cost of flying 2 F-15s.
Really?
Yeah. So they were serious about that shit. But when we had an intruder, if Bearing Control called an intruder was a civilian. If we just had an unauthorized, it'd be somebody down there doing something else, military. The fight stopped. The MiG went high and dry, held, conserved his gas till he figured out what to do, and blew the guy, went home.
So talking about sort of shenanigans and arriving at Tonopah and the MU2, what was the journey like then up to Tonopah for some people on that airplane?
The most dangerous part of the 4477th was that ride from Nellis to Tonopah in the MU2 and then back. Well, it had rules on the MU2, kind of unscripted rule. Do not fall asleep on the MU2 and do not have your line badge on. Because if you fell asleep in the MU2 and somebody took your line badge, when you got there, security came on. If you didn't have a line badge, guess what? You're arrested. You can't fly. You're down a thing. And so everybody was always and we flew the MU2. I didn't fly it, but like Z-Man flew it. So we flew our own MU2s back and forth with all our guys on it in just shitty ass weather and everything. And no, the MU2 was a horror story going up and a horror story coming back. Yeah, but that's how we went back and forth. Cajun, our Marine Cajun, he fell asleep on the MU2, and we had it would hold 6 pilots in regular seats, and the boss sat in one certain padded seat. But the seventh pilot would sit on the crapper in the back. But Cajun fell asleep going up there one morning. He fell asleep, and he had a briefcase. And, you know, you just get up real slow and you go in and you get his briefcase, you open it up and you change the combination, took his line badge, put it in there. So we landed Tonopah, and when you landed, as soon as you landed, the MU-2 would stop and, 200 feet, pull in. Here come all the cops. I got out, commander got out, I walked off the MU-2 and I said, hey, I don't know, but there's some asshole in here that doesn't have a line badge, and I don't know who this son of a bitch is. So Cajun comes walking out and they go, where's your, now these are the same SPs that we see for years. Where's your line badge? He goes, oh shit, maybe it's in my briefcase. Can't get it open. They won't let him out of the airplane. And all of a sudden, his briefcase just comes flying out the door. Damn it. And I yell at him, that's all right, I'll fly your hops, Cajun, while he's trying to figure out how to get it. But you never lost track of your line badge. And if anybody ever bumped into you in the squadron, oh, my ball, and walked by you, you always went, oh shit, because you would snatch a line badge and tape it in the urinal and tell everybody, hey, Cajun's line badge or Mock's line's badge is in the urinal. And you'd run in there to get your line badge and they'd be lined up. Everybody lined up. Is that your line badge? Oh yeah. We had more fun other than flying those MiGs with each other at Tonopah than you can imagine.
Did you ever see any good Finney flights?
Oh yeah. 2 in particular. I saw one guy, he flew his Flogger hop naked. Oh, he wore his boots. He flew naked. Because I flew with him. I was in the MiG, he flew in the Flogger. And we came down initial, just hauling ass, and he pitches out. And it takes forever for the Flogger to turn around. He pitches out, I turn inside him. I land, shit, I'm parked. And he's out over Utah somewhere trying to get that damn thing slowed down and get it down. And he comes in, parks, canopy opens up, and I know he's naked because I can see him on final, or on initial. I said, he gets out of that thing, comes down the ladder, and the fire truck is out there, and he takes off running. Boots, and that's it. He still says he didn't do it. Everybody that's up there knows he did. And he starts running across the ramp, and that fire truck launches a stream of water that hits probably 20 yards in front of him, and he just walks it back until it hits him in the back and he tumbles over. But we did have another one when we had some high rollers up there. And the commander was Hound Dog White. We had a 2-star visiting who was from Nellis, and I was the OPSO. And Hound Dog was a great guy, but damn, anytime he could just get a couple of what he thought were extra points with a high roller, he would. And so we're sitting in the squadron and we have a guy on his last ride, and for whatever, and we always had fun on the last ride. And so for whatever reason, Hound Dog says, hey, General so-and-so, so-and-so's coming back on his last ride. And I'm going, oh, let's go out and take a look. And so we go out and we are ops hangar, Flogger hangar, 21 hangar. We go out and we're looking at the runway. Runway's out in front of us. And I'm standing on the right, 2 stars on the left, and commander. And I've got my little walkie-talkie, and I'm kind of turning away going, got a guy in the tower, and I'm going, you see so-and-so, is he coming back yet? No, he's the on initial. If you see him, give him a heads up that, high rollers out here. Don't be stupid. Yeah, I'll look for him, by now. You see him yet? Does anybody say him? He ought to be coming back. Says he's coming back. No, yeah. So everybody's just kind of, and I'm sitting there going, yeah, I don't. And all of a sudden, from behind us, between the hangars, this Flogger comes over us, and the first thing I see is a motor, and it's like that big around. I mean, shit, it ain't any higher than my roof. No sound, just, and I see a pair of black boots right here, and it's the 2-star. He has jumped straight the hell up next to me, and the commander, Hound Dog, his hat blows off, but he had Thunderbird hair. It never changed. It doesn't make a shit. If it got wet, it was always perfect. His hat blew off, and that thing went over the top of us like you can't believe, between the two hangars. And Hound Dog looks at this 2-star and goes, "Oh, that was his last flight." And he goes, "Yeah, it was." And we didn't fly again for 3 months.
Oh, really?
Oh, hell no. But we gave a lot of briefings to the 3-star about what's going on up here. And yeah. Those are the two best ones.
Did you, so as OPSO, I mean, did you have particular challenges around, I don't want to say discipline, but obviously there was a, it's a macho business, isn't it? You're controlling, it's like herding cats, really, isn't it? Controlling a bunch of fighter pilots. But
everybody took care of themselves. The hardest issue being the OPSO was trying to ensure that the high rollers knew that we knew what we were doing, and we would be doing it fine. And we're not a bunch of cowboys, and we're doing. So it was that kind of a. It was. I remember one of the commanders was briefing a 2-star, and he's going to give what we call the PEG brief, and all the guys are coming up to me going, "Hey, don't let him do that brief. I mean, damn, he's not up here that much. He don't, no. He says, I'm going to give it." So he starts talking, and this 2-star, he knows the program. And so this guy would say something like, "Okay," and then when the Flogger starts flying BFM, the 2-star would go, "I didn't think the Flogger flew BFM. I thought it only flew performance profiles." And the commander would go, "Well, I might not be using the right words, Paco." So he'd dribble this shit off to me, and I go, "Well, it was just a poor choice of words. Here's what we do." And that 2-star looked at me and goes, "Well, that ain't what he said. And he's the commander." So that's the kind of stuff you deal with. Yeah, but maybe he just misspoke. Well, maybe not. So you dealt with stuff like that. I had the 1-star call me at Tonopah. We had a way of answering the phone, and you didn't use your rank and stuff because it was a regular phone. You just said Geisler. If you called up to Tonopah. And so the ops clerk says, "Paco, it's a phone. It's Geisler." "Really? You don't have, I recognized his voice." I said, "Okay." He says, "I need you to be, I need you to come over to the office." I go, "I'm not, I'm at a forward operating location." "I don't care. Come to my office." Go get a T-38, fly all the way down to Nellis. Walk into his office. Sitting there, secretary's talking to me. He calls me in. I go in, I salute. He goes, "Where's so-and-so?" I said, he names one of the guys. He goes, "Where's so-and-so?" "I don't know. I don't have his hand receipt today. I just have no idea where he is." He goes, "Well, I'll tell you where he is. He's messing around with, such and such and such and such and such." I said, I don't know. He says, when you see him again?" I said, "Probably Friday." He said, "Tell him he's fired." This guy was above me. I went, damn, this is like a Wednesday. Friday, I go down, we come all the way back to Nellis. We're in the hangar, or in the trailers, waiting to debrief our guys. I have to go back and talk to him. "How'd it go this week?" I said, it went all right. I mean, this and that, but, the so-and-so called me. I had to go down and see him, and he wanted me to tell you you're fired. Fired? run off. And then they made up. But yeah, shit like that. But discipline for the guys, no.
So Finney flights after. I mean, I'm pretty sure I named both those people in my book, but I won't do it again. Someone can go and buy the book if they want to know who they are. But so Finney flights after that, that notorious one. Did they change? Was there some personal accountability then to fly a more sedate Finney flight, or did people still push the limits?
I think I think they changed. My Finney flight, I came back just like I was supposed to, a little bit faster. Haul ass down initial, come in and land. It was painted, maintenance guys and this and that and this and that, and party that night up at the man camp, big party and everything like that. So I think as people saw that, okay, so I can fly between the hangars. Who cares? Ain't nobody gonna see it. So I think they transitioned from being a hero shot to this is for the maintenance guys. Here's a guy that flew 500 MiG-21 sorties and didn't kill himself. That's on you guys. That wasn't because of me. I didn't fix this thing. You guys gave me this airplane 500 times. Didn't come apart, didn't catch on fire. I flew it 500 times. So this is for you. This is on you. Yeah.
So last question from me, Paco, and then I'll people have been posting some Q&As if you've got time. Some AMA type things. So but in terms of your career then, so you left the 4477th and you went to the 33rd fighter wing or tactical fighter wing at Eglin, and you commanded an F-15 squadron there. And I know that you worked hard to get that squadron 58th. Was it the 58th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you got the 58th exposed to constant peg. And I know you sort of missed out by a gnat's whisker on going to Desert Storm.
Yeah. I left in 86 and went to Eglin and was the ops officer in the 60th, which was one of the three squadrons there, and then left and then became the squadron commander in 88. And then in 90, I was promoted out of the squadron. If you, back then in the Air Force, you could be a lieutenant colonel, but if you made colonel, you were done. So I only got, and the squadron commander tour is 2 years. I got 15 months, got promoted and got reassigned. So I get reassigned in April, and in August, they go to Desert Shield. Now those 15, 16 months prior to that, because of, I just come from the 4477. We did the same thing in the 60s. We just flew MiG after MiG after MiG after MiG sorties. Just, I could call Scotty, I could call Fast Jack, hey, stick us on the schedule. We're coming to Red Flag, stick us on, and so we could do that. And so they flew it almost became, you want to go to Nellis, fly this week? Yeah, what the hell? What do you mean, what the hell? Yeah. And so they leave in August. I'm in Iceland. I was the director of ops for F-15 operations in Iceland, trying to take pictures of a 300-year-old bomber out of, somewhere. I could give a shit less. I never went up to get a picture. I just didn't give a damn, but that was my job. So I went over there and did that. But I could talk to them on the phones and stuff. So then the war started, and I got to talk to Cheese and JB and all that, and realized too that I was really a lucky son of a bitch, because in '88 when I went to the squadron, I had some pretty good friends that were worked in personnel and stuff, and I was really able to pad that squadron. I had Cheese Grader shot down 2 MiGs. Well, he came to me in the club one night. He was an aggressor. He came to me in the club and said, you know what? I'd really like to be in the 58th and work for you? I said, well, you seem like a pretty good guy. Checked his records, got his rip, take a look at it, made personnel call. A month later, he's in my squadron. Tellini, JB, McGill.
Cesar Rodriguez, was he in your squadron?
Rico, yeah. Rico came to me from an A-10. But he had a good, he had good rep. He came to me from an A-10. So he came in and I always would take him back in my office back there and say, it's a tough squadron right here. No slack. There's going to be no slack. You're going to do it our way or you ain't going to do it. So just be ready. It's just, we're not humble about it. I don't give a damn about chrome, mailboxes and stuff or whatever the high rollers want. It's going to be no. Rico, in fact, he just had a hell of a time doing night refueling in the F-15. It was just kicking his ass up around his neck. And so one night I said, okay, here's what we're going to do. You and I are going to go out in a D model. I'll be in the back seat. You'll be in the front seat. It'll be darker and a handful of assholes out there. And I'm going to take you out there. We're going to join up with this KC-10. And all we're going to do for an hour and a half is refuel, drop off, refuel. Until I feel like that you're good. And he did. We went out and taught him how to do it and everything. He's great. And then he comes back, lands, blows both tires. I said, that's smooth. I get out. I said, I'm going to ride back with the maintenance guys. You can sit in this thing while they tow it back. But no slack. But, look how he did.
Yeah. Just
no slack. Great group of guys. And they expected so much of themselves, Everybody said, people say, you trained a great squadron. Oh, man. These guys were heroes well before they came to me. Somebody just gave me their name. I gave them a chance.
I was going to ask you how you felt about missing out then on the opportunity to go out and shoot.
How you think I felt? Oh, it's great. I'm glad I didn't have to go.
I'm going
to tell you something that's the honest truth. I'm just going to tell you something that's the honest truth. At the time, it just really soured me that they were going without me. Then during the war, when they're calling, ET's calling and McGill, I got this, I shot down this and this and this, soured me. And I can't think of a good word to tell you, but like when they have 58th reunions, I don't go.
Really?
No. They got one in October. I don't go. And it's not those guys. It was the system. And I just, I'm so proud of what they did, but I just can't stand off to the side and listen to the ones that took them. And it should have been my guys because they were my guys. They weren't anybody else's. So I just, that's just me. That's the way I am. I don't go. I still keep in contact with a couple of them. They always want to see me and want me to go and this and that, but I don't do it. I can't do it. They don't piss me off. It's just what happened really pisses me off. I'm proud of them, but I just don't do it.
Where did you go? Where did you go after Eglin?
I went to Iceland.
Oh, sorry, you went to Iceland. So where did you go after Iceland then? Was that the end of your career?
No. After Iceland, that was my first time out of the cockpit. I went to Air War College in Maxwell, Alabama. You talked about being out of. I'm sitting, I'm sitting in these classes going, what am I doing here? I don't even know what they're talking about. I'm supposed to be getting my master's in international strategic studies. And I'm going, say what? No, this is not for me. I mean, it was the most horrible year of my life. And when there's 210 of us, when the assignments came down, everybody's getting their joint tours and their hugs. I got a joint tour. I'm going, I will put a pistol in my mouth if I have to put up with this shit. I get OG assignment to Luke Air Force Base. And either Bubba Chuck, Horner, or one of those guys said, you can go back to the line. And when I walked across the stage, we had to go this formal graduation. One of the two stars who had been at Nellis when I was there, Michael P.C. Carnes, was now the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Air Force at the time. I walked across, they call out my name. I walk across, he's standing there, gives me my diploma. We stop for a second, shake hands. He goes, where are you going? I said, I'm going back to the line. He goes, that's where you ought to be.
Nice.
I go to Luke, F-16 and F-15Es, the albino E's or the albino F-15, they had left. It was just the E models. And my orders say, you need to get some air and ground on you. So we're going to transition you to the F-16. The wing commander at the time was a guy named Tom Browning. He had been a aggressor with me. General Tom Browning was a major, POW Vietnam. I go up and I'm talking to him in his office. He said, I wanted you to come here. I want you to be here and everything. I said, I just don't want to fly the F-16. I mean, why would you all of a sudden put me in an F-16? So I stayed in the F-15, but I flew the E model. So I got to do all the night lantern shit and everything like that. So, and that was fun, flying with brand new lieutenants. I flew with the very first, I flew with the very first F-15 E model girl, Flynn.
Yeah.
Flew TR-1 with her, and that was weird because the Air Training Command called and said, who's flying with Jeannie on TR-1? And I said, it'll be so-and-so. And they said, no, I think you are. So I flew with her, TR-1, but we got out of the airplane. And I said, you did good. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. All I'm going to ask you is you just don't kill nobody. Don't kill yourself. Don't hit anything to the ground. Don't hit the ground. And don't run into another airplane. And all that press is over there by base ops. That's for you. I'm going over here. And she, became a 2-star.
Yeah. And well respected too. I mean, there are some people.
Oh, yeah. I saw her at Nellis.
Yeah.
The last time we were out there, when we were dedicating the Threat Museum to Pappy Frick. I walked by and she looks at me and I go, absolutely correct. I said, I'm happy for you, proud of you. And it was good. And then I left Luke and went to Reese Air Force Base. OG at Reese.
T-37s?
Huh?
T-37s?
T-37, T-38. Yeah. Because what happened was when the reorganization of the military started with General Peake and everybody, it was the product that would come out of UPT and show up at RTU was just not ready for RTU. They were having a hard time in replacement training, So they said, we want you to go to Reese and we want you to change the T-37 program and the T-38 program and turn it into a specialized UPT where T-38s, they started introducing BFM and tactical formations and this and that and this and that. So they understand the idea behind it when they transitioned to RTUs. And so I did that for a year. Then a good friend of mine called me and said, you ready to grow up? And so I got out and went to Southwest Airlines. Because after Reese, the writing was on the wall, you're getting ready to go do a joint tour. And you have to have a joint tour before you can get promoted from colonel. And I said, so let me guess, I'm going to go do a joint tour with a bunch of Italians or whatever, put on 60 pounds and get a start. No, I think I'll just step aside gracefully and go do something else. So I went to work for Southwest Airlines.
But you took some of your shenanigans with you, didn't you?
A lot of them. Actually, at Southwest, I became almost the VP of pilot hiring, because the two guys that convinced me to come, one was the director of flight operations for the whole airline, and the other two were chief pilots. And so they put me in charge of pilot hiring. And so we changed the program and came out of the way, and then started making phone calls. And
can you just before, because I do have some questions from the people that have been listening. So thank you everyone who's been listening and has been really, really patient. And of course, Paco, thanks for continuing to give us your time. But just before I go on to the questions from the people that have been listening, would you tell the story of the thing that you would do to keep people on their toes in the 737? I'm being vague because if I say it, then it will, it will take away from your retelling of the activity. But there was something you would do to sort of jolt somebody back into, if they were inattentive, they were sort of daydreaming during a flight.
I can't remember.
Alarms.
Oh, well, yeah. It's airline flying is, I used to sit in that thing and I would go, if I had to do this my whole life, holy mackerel. So you'd be flying and, you'd meet your guy that you're going to fly with, your first officer. And you meet him at the beginning of the month, then you're going to fly with him the whole month, and so, okay, what's your background? Well, I flew such and such. Okay, well, we had nothing in common. And then sometimes, okay, we do have something in common or whatever. So you'd be flying along and it's so boring. That's why there's a cockpit door, because it's so boring. You're just sitting up there flying. You'd be flying along and I'd be constantly looking over at him, and you see him over there nodding off a little bit. And I would reach down to the fire warning system. It's a big old test, loud buzz, big red lights and everything. And I would just go turn that on and then click off the autopilot and watch them flail and jump and scream and holler. Oh, it's just I just like to do that every hour. And they say, don't. Southwest was fun. I enjoyed it, but it was just, I did it for 20 years and that was enough.
Let me ask you then some questions, Paco. So Vic Saney asked, did the USSR conduct DACT training using captured American equipment? Do you know anything about that?
I had read, I don't know if they did training, but I had read that when Iran fell, that there were a couple of airplanes in Iran that had not been maintained, but had become flyable. And I do know that there was a Saudi F-15 that shot down an Iranian airplane, and that airplane happened to be an F-4. But I don't think the Soviets did dissimilar training against any of our assets, because we never would see them do dissimilar training against each other. Mm-hmm. You never saw them with the spies and stuff doing anything other than very scripted, similar, go home.
Mm-hmm. Peter Friedrich asks, was the MiG-21 a better aircraft than the F-104G used by many European countries? I know you didn't fly the F-104, but you have a view on that?
The 104, I was at Luke in the F-4s when the 104 was there, and we never got to fly against the 104s because it was, at the time, mostly the Germans were flying it. But the MiG-21 was an interceptor airplane that was built much like the 104. Now, it had a little bit bigger wingspan. It was like almost 24 feet, the wingspan, whereas the 104 was just, it barely had wings, but it had a big ass motor. And so they were both interceptor airplanes, but the MiG-21 eventually transitioned to becoming a viable fighter. I don't think the F-104 really became that. I think it stayed even when the Canadians had it, I think it stayed as a more of an interceptor, close air support, ground attack airplane. Almost like a baby 105.
This isn't a question, but this is William Baer saying he's here just in case you need a snap. And Z-Man, at some point, when you were talking about the...
That's Billy Bear.
He's got a question for you in a minute. So Z-Man just wanted to point out to you, do not speak perfect English. Okay, so Boomhauer Ooh asks, what did you think about the F-20 Tiger Shark? Did you think anything about the F-20?
Well, I never flew it. I flew against it when we had F-5Es. It came to Nellis a couple of times and landed, and we hosted it on our ramp when they were trying to sell it. And in fact, we wanted the F-5E community, the aggressor community, we wanted the airplane because of its avionics and its capability and everything like that. So we would go out and fly one-on-one BFM with it against a Northrop test pilot normally. And there was an Air Force guy that flew it too, but he was a test type of a guy. But it was kind of a neat airplane, but it was like most things, as it got more avionics and got nicer, it got bigger. So it was substantially bigger than an F-5E.
If I remember, I really don't know much about it, but did it have an APG-66? It had the F-16 radar, APG-60?
Well, I don't know what it had at that time. It had the radar that it had in it when we would play with it was a full track radar, which the F-15 or the F-5E just had basic sweep radar, just a display. So it was fairly new when we played with it at Nellis. And then the Air Force decided they weren't going to buy it. We never saw it again.
Okay, so Sim Sedlow asked about parallel taxiway, and then I think Rob Zettel, Z-Man, answered that in the thread. So there was a question here from Jeffrey McQuate about whether or not you were read into the F-117 program.
Yes.
Did you get to go and see the airplane, or did you just got it?
What happened was the first planner I worked for, George Jennin, as that program grew down there, I would see the hangars and this and that, and if you spent the night at the man camp, you'd hear, you might wake up at night and you'd hear airplane. You go, what the hell is going on? And so one day, George Jennin and I were standing out on the MiG-21 ramp, and I looked at his line badge, and all of us had a red stripe on it. And it was the level of program brief that you were into. And we had a gold stripe. And I said, the hell is that? He goes, it's a read-in for that program down there. And tonight we're going to go down there. So I went down like at 10 o'clock and go in this hangar, and they have all these papers and sign this, and this is, super secret and everything and whatever. And so then they play some music and they open this door, and I go in this hangar, and there it is. And it's sitting there in the hangar. And the guy, Wally, the guy that's showing it to me, I knew him. I go, what the hell is that? He goes, it's a 117 night off, no wind. It looks like a Duber or a Cocker. I mean, is it covered, or is that really the thing on it? He said, no, that's it. It doesn't come off. That's it. And so we got read in. And so the next day I have a strike, and guys are going. And so what happened was I said, okay, one night I said, for all of you who want to, why don't we go back up from the man camp? Man camp was about 10 miles from the base. I said, why don't we go back up to the base about 10 o'clock tonight and just sit out and look at the stars, take our lawn chairs up there and say, who wants to do that? So we go up there, and here they come. They're going, what the hell? So they ended up briefing everybody in, and Wally, when they briefed me in, he goes, nah, he said, I have a lot of guys down here that would like to, during the day, come up and, see the assets and everything. I went, oh, we're classified, bro. I said, we can't just be showing just anybody our shit. He said, come on. So, you know, we briefed them in too. We asked, I'll tell you a story. We asked them one time, I asked one of the guys, I said, during the day when you guys are sleeping up at the man camp, because we would come back over the man camp, I'd say, you know, are we making no, I mean, you know, if we need to, we'll figure out a way to not make noise and interrupt your, you know, crew rest and all that. And he goes, dude, you ain't gonna make enough noise in that little thing to bother us. Oh, okay. So next morning, we have our little briefing, and I go, okay, today we're going to start new recoveries in the Tonopah. They're called boom recoveries. Everybody's going, what the hell is that? And I said, what it is save a couple of liters of gas. And when you come back, I want you to get real high, and I want you to point at the man camp and go as fast as you can. And then a couple thousand feet above it, sling sonic booms one after the other, because they don't think we make enough noise. We were slinging booms, Steve. I kid you not. We were slinging booms that were so loud, they were shaking our hangar doors. And our maintenance guys were going, damn, stuff's falling off the walls. And these hangar doors, they're huge. And it was just one after the other until Wally called and said, okay, we get it. I said, okay. But boom recoveries, yeah, we called them boom recoveries.
So Jim says he hasn't got a question, but he just wanted to say thank you for the colour that you lent to the Red Eagles, and he's looking forward to watching the video. So Z-Man answered the question about the parallel taxiway. So Sim asked whether or not you like the cockpit blue, and then Z-Man said all the cockpits were grey. Yeah. So all right. Did you use braking chutes on landing?
The Flogger did. The Flogger always, unless there was something wrong with it, but the Flogger always used a drag chute. We had a drag chute in the 21 also. It was recommended, but once you got comfortable in it, you didn't need a drag chute, you know, unless you landed way long or way hot or the winds or something like that. Because the drag chute was weird, because when it came out and blossomed, it was above, and if you didn't keep the power up and try to, you couldn't taxi because the damn chute was in the way, and you'd bust it. And if you didn't do that, it would fall down on the burner can and break it. So you would pop it to start to slow down, and then you had a button to release it so it would fall out. But if you failed to release it, you could not taxi with that drag chute on the airplane. So probably 90% of the hops, you didn't use the drag chute on the MiG-21. The MiG-21 had a braking system for both mains and the nose gear. So it was a 3-point landing, a 3-point braking. So you could stop that airplane. Yeah, no problem.
So Chuck Out, who I think is the guy who does the guides for the DCS series, won't mean anything to you, Paco, but Chuck, great work. He asked, what was your favorite and most annoying thing about the MiG-21?
I guess the favorite was just how fast, it would go. I mean, it was just so fast. The most annoying thing with the airplane was how fast it lost airspeed. You could fly down initial at Tonopah at 1,500 feet at say 400 knots and do a 180-degree turn and lose 200 knots. You could get 500 knots and have to do a brake turn and get 180 degrees a turn later and have 150 knots. So your airspeed, you just pissed away airspeed like you can't believe, because of that 57-degree swept delta wing. It just had no lift whatsoever, none. So it would lose airspeed, which sometimes can be an asset, if somebody's really closing on you. But sometimes you can lose airspeed so fast that you can't even keep track of it.
Speaking of which, you did say at the beginning that you didn't do all your 500 in the same aeroplane. Did they have idiosyncrasies? I mean, given the history of some of these things, I talked to Bob Drabant, who had sort of come in and helped try to get some of these back to flyable status. did you get to learn the idiosyncrasies of each one?
Yeah, yeah. You knew, when you would walk out to a certain tail number, you would go, okay, this thing's going to fly about, it's going to be out of rig. It's, stick's going to be over here for level flight. It ain't going to be right in the middle. So yeah, oh yeah, they all had their, characteristics. Unlike the F7, when it came, they were all exactly the same. But they all had their own little character. It's like a personality. You go out, okay, this thing's going to, react this way. It's going to this, that, and it's going to have slow burner light. It's going to have this, yeah. You knew. Whereas you got in an F-15, shit, every one of them's the same,
Yeah. Okay. Just making sure I don't miss any questions. So, yeah, what's your take? So this is Mr. Assists. What's your take on the later 4th gen Red Air? So what do you think about MiG-29, Su-27?
I was, I just never was around it. I got out almost, I got out in 94. They came across them during Desert Storm, not many, a couple. McGill got his and some of them, but, they were still, like CheeseNet, they were still, busting floggers and fox bats and stuff like that. And so the 4th generation airplane, all I get to see is YouTube videos of them at the Paris air shows. So it's hard to say. I only because of my past experience, I do think that no matter what it is, 4th generation or whatever, that it's well overrated. It's not comparable to any. When I was an aggressor and the Flogger came out, which was the byproduct of the MiG-21, the next airplane after the MiG-21, when that airplane came out, we were told you don't even want to be anywhere near that thing. You don't want to fly again. It's just going to be, and it turned out to be just an absolute shit heap. Yeah. So I would have to actually get in it to feel what it really does. And then, there are people that can obviously tell you if they're allowed to do with it as, full spectrum of its flight, where you take an ECM chart and say, I'm going to fly from this point on that chart to that point on that chart and see what it does. I'm not going to go out and just measure, oh, there's an extra angle of attack, there's an extra 1.5 degrees of turn rate. I want to know what it does. I want to know what its corner velocity is, and I want to know what it can sustain in G's and what it can hold in G's. That's what I want to know, and I want to see it from 0 to however fast it's supposed to be able to go. There were times, Steve, there were times when you'd be in the high 40s looking for a guy, and you'd see him down there, a little bitty guy flying along in red flag or whatever, and you'd roll that damn MiG over and point at the ground, and you'd go 750 knots. You go by an Eagle like it just flamed out, just, just speed is life, Some people say sight is life, but speed is life. It would scream. And that's what I would want to see in the 4th generation. But I don't have any experience.
You obviously got out of the Eagle then after Keflavik. So that would have been C models. You got AMRAAM while you were at Eglin.
Yeah.
So you would have been there for the sort of I don't want to say technical revolution, but you would have been there as the Eagle matured into a very much more capable platform. So I wonder then what your view on is. What is your view on the importance of, let's say, aerodynamic capabilities versus avionics capabilities and weapon systems capabilities? If the ability of a flanker to do the Pugachev maneuver, for example, does that matter if he's going to get killed beyond visual range?
The avionics, the F-15, there's an F-15C and then there's an F-15 MISSIP-C, Multi-Stage Improvement Program F-15. They're totally different. And now there's other ones even. And as a side note, the F-15 weapons school is closing in December of this year. Believe that. But avionics, drive us to situational awareness. And, I just wonder if we'll ever really need one-on-one DVFR fighting.
Does that make you a heretic? I mean, if that's because that's a replay almost, isn't it, of what was being said in the 50s?
Well, what it is it's the beginning of when the F4 came out, no gun. We relied on avionics and weapons to not allow us to have AVFR fighters. But the difference between avionics back then and avionics, like when I got out on a MISSIP jet, oh my God. But I think the error that is so easy to make with all those avionics, whether it be the Lightning or the Raptor, it is going to be how much training and the quality of that training. There were times in the MISSIP F-15, it had all these weird avionics and highly classified things on it and in it and this and that and the slammers and shit. That you would take guys out that were new to the squadron, because we had the MISSIP F-15, we had the first 24. You would take them out and you'd sit in the armament area while they were last chance of the jet, and you'd look over there at the guy, and he'd probably be sitting in it like this. And you'd want to just put a drool cup right here, because he's just, you'd look at him and you go, oh, geez. I mean, yeah, they don't even know where do I start to even check this stuff? So it's the training that makes those avionics. In the F4, we didn't get no training in any of that stuff. They just said you didn't need it. You only flew against another F4. Who cares? We didn't do any dissimilar training or weird formations. And you run an intercept, be two of you running an intercept against another F4, one. Boom, boom. Oh, yeah, right. This is easy. No, not anymore. These avionics nowadays, it's just beyond comprehension. You ought not be able to get in an airplane and take off and look down and not see the floor.
Yeah.
You do that, I'm too old. Yeah, I need to go home. Yeah, that's way past my pay grade.
So Mr. Assis also asks, and we're coming to the end here, Paco. Thanks for continuing with us. But did you have to undo any training from your time in the Red Eagles in order to go back to flying fighters as a Blue Air guy?
No, because I flew the F-15. I flew the F-15 on Mondays, and I flew the Bandits Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, the airplane changed a little bit. The transition that was hard was when I left the weapons school and the 4477 and went to Eglin and was there 2 years, and then the MISSIP jets started showing up. Because those avionics, that airplane became a different airplane. Totally different airplane, night and day. What it could do, its engines, avionics, yeah.
Do you know Frank Fagan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he says, do you still design flower arrangements?
Yeah, see? Yeah. And that's a nice question, because he was going to ask one that was ugly. And that's what he wanted me to do. And that leads back to a long time ago when, for whatever reason, as a hobby, I thought that would be a neat hobby. It wasn't. Yeah, I arranged flowers.
So here's a question. I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this. NG Fan asks what the role of the Red Hats was during your time in the Red Eagles.
Yeah.
Okay. So has there been any communication or exchanges? So Vic Sunny asks, any communication or exchanges between Red Eagles and former Soviet Warsaw Pact pilots? You ever spoken to any of the counterparts from behind the Iron Curtain?
When Victor came to Nellis, I was one of the guys that kind of did an escort to show him around and all that kind of stuff in the background.
This is Belenko.
Yeah. So when he was there, but and we were trying to figure out what he knew and what he didn't know squat for us to affect us at Tonopah. And so it was a wash for us. But I've never spoke to another MiG pilot.
You haven't?
If that's what they're asking. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than an American.
WWU21 asks, how long was the MiG flyable clean without tanks? Could you engage in longer missions, or was it just enough to quickly intercept and then back home?
We flew 20 minutes. 20
minutes.
It was about a 20-minute hop. But realized that we took off. We ran about a 40 or 50-mile intercept and then would do hard BFM, close in, day VFR fighting in full blower. So, maybe 50, 60, 70 miles from the field and then back. So, we blew a lot of gas out. Now, we did have centerline tanks for it, but the tanks that they had are not fight tanks. They're ferry tanks. You can put gas in them to help you go a longer range, but you can't fight with them because they're not baffled. The gas waffles back and forth and the jet goes down. And so it's got a severe G limitation, like 2 Gs on it. It's just so we didn't do any of that.
Chuck Owl asks, do you know what the maintainers thought about the MiG-21?
They loved it. It was very easy to work on for them. Mm-hmm. They loved it. They knew it like the back of their hand.
Okay. I'm sure, I can't see the question, but I'm sure Billy Bayer asked why the T-33 is not a sexy aeroplane. And that's the last question. I won't take any more questions after that. Do you have any idea what that was all about?
No.
There you go. Let me just make sure I got the question right. Ask Paco why the T-33 isn't sexy. No. It
probably has to do with something that I said a long time ago, but I'm too old to remember.
See, he's not popping up here. He's yeah. Okay. Well, look, we're 2 hours in, and we've definitely overstayed our welcome. Paco, it's been such a treat to have you on the channel, regaling us with your stories and whetting our appetites for those of us who do flight sim for the forthcoming release of this module. And thank you so much. Personally, I'm looking forward to seeing you again next year at the reunion.
I hope so. Come to Nellis.
Yeah, it would be it'd be great to see you again. So on that note, I'll end it to the audience. Thank you everybody for joining. Really appreciate it. Again, please show your support for Bunyap on the module, and if you think it's any good, it's him that deserves all the praise. So thanks everybody.
All right. Appreciate it, Steve.
All right, Paco, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Really